I never imagined that a frantic knocking on my apartment door, in the absolute silence of a rainy Tuesday night, would end up becoming the defining moment of my year. When I saw my student standing there, soaked and shivering, I assumed it was a simple emergency, a lost key, a missed deadline. But the conversation that unraveled over the next few hours didn't just change my evening. It dismantled everything I thought I understood about boundaries, the human spirit, and the fragile nature of trust. Before we step into that night, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Drop your city in the comments. Reading your answers truly connects us. Now, let's begin. I was curled up in my favorite armchair, a book resting forgotten on my lap, listening to the wind rattle the window panes. It was late, nearly midnight, and the city outside was asleep. When the sharp rap at the door broke the silence, I jumped. My first instinct was caution. Nobody visited this late. But the knocking was persistent, carrying a rhythm of desperation. I opened the door to find Liam standing in the hallway. He was one of my brightest students, usually composed, sharp-witted, and confident. But tonight, he looked like a ghost. His hair was plastered to his forehead from the rain, and he was gripping the strap of his bag so tightly his knuckles were white. "Professor." "Clara," he stammered, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go." The surprise must have been written all over my face, but I quickly stepped aside. "Liam, come inside quickly, you're freezing." The air in my apartment was thick with the scent of old paper and the vanilla candle I'd been burning. It was a stark contrast to the storm he had just stepped out of. He hesitated in the entryway, dripping water onto the mat, looking like he wanted to bolt. "I shouldn't have come," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. This is too much. Nonsense," I said, my voice finding a gentle, grounding pitch. "Take off your coat. I'll put the kettle on." I didn't treat him like a student in that moment. I treated him like a weary traveler who had lost his way. We sat in the living room, the dim light of the floor lamp creating a small island of safety. I handed him a mug of hot cocoa, something simple and comforting, and watched as he wrapped both hands around it, seeking its warmth. "I feel like I'm falling apart," he admitted finally, the words tumbling out in a rush. "It's not the coursework. It's the noise inside my head. I thought I could outrun it, but tonight, walking past your building, I just stopped." I saw a crack in his armor that I had never noticed in the lecture hall. Liam was the one who always had the answers, the one who led the debates. But here, in the quiet of my home, he was just a young man trying to carry a weight that had become too heavy. "I'm honored that you stopped," I told him, leaning forward slightly. "There is no bravery in suffering in silence, Liam. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is admit you're tired." He looked up then, and the raw gratitude in his eyes took my breath away. I've never had anyone tell me that. Everyone just expects me to be capable. All the time. We talked for hours. The rain lashed against the glass, sealing us in. He spoke of the pressure to succeed, the crushing loneliness of living in a city that never pauses, and the fear that he was merely playing a role he hadn't chosen. I listened. I didn't offer textbook advice, I just offered my presence. By the time he stood to leave, the storm outside had settled into a steady, quiet drizzle. He looked different, shoulders dropped, breathing steady. "Thank you, Clara," he said, using my first name for the first time. It felt natural, not disrespectful. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't opened the door." "You never have to find out," I replied. "You aren't alone, Liam." Closing the door after him, I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. My heart was pounding not from fear, but from the adrenaline of raw, unfiltered human connection. I realized then that we had crossed a bridge. The hierarchy of teacher and student had dissolved, replaced by something far more profound, two people witnessing each other's humanity. The next morning, the sun broke through the gray clouds, flooding my kitchen with pale light. I stood with my coffee, staring at the empty street below, my mind replaying the night. Why me? Why did he trust me with his fragility? Around noon, an email popped up on my phone. No subject line. Just, "Thank you for the shelter." In more ways than one L. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I replied simply, "The door is always open." A few days passed. In class, Liam was back to his attentive self, but there was a shift. A softness in his gaze when our eyes met, a subtle nod of acknowledgement that felt like a secret language. I tried to dismiss it as simple gratitude, but deep down, I knew the dynamic had irrevocably changed. It was Thursday evening when the intercom buzzed. I didn't need to ask who it was. When I opened the door, Liam was there, holding a book he'd mentioned during our first talk. He looked less desperate this time, but the intensity in his eyes remained. I found the copy I told you about, he said, offering it like a peace offering. And I was hoping we could talk again. Please come in. This time, the conversation flowed with an effortless rhythm. We moved past his anxieties and into philosophy, dreams, and the strange, winding paths of life. He sat on the sofa more relaxed, while I sat in the armchair across from him. At a lull in the conversation, he looked out the window at the city lights. Do you ever feel like you're waiting for your real life to begin? Like you're just watching yourself from a distance? All the time, I confessed, surprising myself with the admission. We spend so much time curating who we are for the world, we sometimes forget who we are in the quiet. He turned his gaze back to me, studying my face with a curiosity that made my pulse quicken. Why do you listen to me like this? You could have just sent me to a counselor. You're giving me your time, your energy. Why? Because I see you, Liam? I said, the truth of it ringing in the air. Not just the transcript or the grades. I see the person beneath it all. And I think you see me too. He went quiet, absorbing the weight of those words. I do, he whispered. I really do. The weeks that followed were a blur of shared glances and anticipated evenings. He visited again on a Saturday, just as dusk was turning the sky a deep, bruised purple. We sat in the semi-darkness, the room illuminated only by the street lamps outside. The air between us had grown thick with something unspoken. It wasn't just mentorship anymore. It was a gravitational pull. Clara, he started, his voice low, trembling slightly. I need to be honest, even if it risks everything. I feel connected to you. In a way that scares me. It's not just gratitude, it's deeper. I set my tea down, my heart hammering against my ribs. I knew the professional boundaries, the logic, the rules. But I also knew what I felt. I know, Lime. I said softly. I feel it too. It's rare to find someone who understands the language your soul speaks. But we have to be careful. We have to respect what this is, and what it can't be right now. He nodded, looking relieved rather than rejected. I just needed to know I wasn't making it up in my head. You aren't, I assured him. The final significant visit came on a cold, crisp night. The heating in my building hummed, creating a cozy cocoon against the winter chill. Liam arrived, not with a crisis, but with a calmness that suited him. We sat closer this time. The space between us on the sofa was small, charged with a magnetic energy. We talked about the future, his, mine, ours, in a vague, abstract sense. I used to feel so invisible, he said, looking at his hands. But here, with you, I feel solid, real. I reached out, covering his hand with mine. His skin was warm, and he turned his palm up to clasp my fingers. It was a gesture of anchoring, not just affection. You've helped me too, you know, I told him. You've reminded me that it's okay to be vulnerable. That connection isn't something you plan, it's something that finds you. We sat in silence for a long time, hands clasped, listening to the city breathe outside. It was a moment of perfect clarity. We didn't need to define it. We didn't need to rush it. We just existed in that shared space of trust. When he finally stood to leave, the reluctance was palpable. Thank you, Clara, he said, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. Always. I replied. I watched him walk down the hallway, disappearing into the shadows of the stairwell. I closed the door and leaned back against it, exhaling a breath I felt I'd been holding for a month. The apartment was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It felt filled with the echoes of our conversations. I realized then that life has a funny way of delivering exactly what you need, often in the package you least expect. A knock on the door at midnight. A student with a heavy heart. A connection that defies logic. As I walked to the window to watch the first light of dawn creep over the skyline, I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was merely the end of the beginning. We had found a sanctuary in each other, a rare, fragile, and beautiful thing that I would guard with everything I had. And standing there, bathed in the morning light, I finally understood that the most meaningful conversations of our lives are the ones we never prepare for.